As a wolf creator, I knew that I'd have to make a video about Alpha and Omega at some point in my YouTube time, but I wasn't sure how much people would or would not want me to see the franchise. However, after reading many of the comments in my Wolfwalkers review and seeing some interesting comments, I figure, you know what? Let's do this! Can't be that bad, right? Boy, was I effing wrong! Hello everyone, and welcome back to Wolf Tales, where storytelling runs wild. I think the intro was clear enough about what we're covering today, but for those who have no idea what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be covering off the legendarily horrendous Alpha and Omega series. Starting off in 2010, Alpha and Omega was a wolf series about two wolves called Kate and Humphrey, one alpha, one omega, who fall in love and face everything in the wild, from cars to bears to trains to apparently socio-political issues between wolves, as they go on a journey to fall in love. Now, as many people had commented in the Wolfwalker video I make, I am a wolf content creator, and you guessed it, we're going to be looking at this series from all aspects. But I actually have a little secret to tell you all. I was actually pretty nervous to talk about this franchise. I mean, I had no idea that so many of the people who were fans of this series were very vocal in their approval of it, and also very vocal on how they hated individuals who did not like the series. But after taking some time to think it over and finding a channel called Dumbsville, link in the description below for their ranking video, I decided to take my crack at ranking the Alpha and Omega series from best to worst. Because it is pretty obvious that these videos need a lot of work. And I mean a lot of work. But the big question is, which is the best and which is the worst of all of these 8 movies, and what exactly makes them just as bad or just as good compared to others? For those of you who are interested, let's find out on today's first new Wolf Tales of the new year. Also, as a fair warning, just to reiterate, I know I may be interested in the first movie, spoiler alert, but I don't actually really like this series. If that upsets you, or you don't agree with my opinions on the film, or you just feel upset by the video in general, please know that these are just my opinions, and if you feel differently about what I'm saying, that's okay. You're allowed to like something I don't, and vice versa. For now, let's dive into the Alpha and Omega series and rank these 8 movies from best to worst. Number 1. Alpha and Omega 1. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Alpha and Omega 1 is simply the best because it's what a movie should do. Give us an interesting concept. As simple as the answer may be, there isn't really much to say. The animation is the best in the series, the characters were kinda fleshed out, and it actually gave us semi-realistic wolves compared to the other movies. Plus, it even took time to expand on the world. I'll admit, I love Garth and Lily and Kate and Humphrey's story, though Garth and Lily are still my favorite. I love Eve's little funny, threatening nature to anyone who harms her pups, and I love Winston's design. Heck, I'm not going to be ashamed to admit that I bought the movie, the soundtrack, and when I just want a little bit of music to listen to, I will put on the soundtrack for some fun writing experiences. This is especially true for the Moonlight Howl and Kate's funeral. For a while, this was a wolf movie that I liked quite a bit, but the only thing that dragged on my enjoyment for a while was I wasn't too big a fan of the unnatural movements that the wolves had, as well as the many plot holes that litter this movie. These unrealistic aspects were usually things like them walking on 2 legs, putting on clothing, and knowing a bit more about human life than honestly they should have, which broke the realism. Which is usually why I like animated movies about animals. I know these seem weird since animation constantly makes kid cartoons goofy and unrealistic, but admittedly, if the focus of the plot in this movie is about real-life wolf issues, such as food scarcity, then I want to see them cover it like real-life wolves would. Overall, this movie had nothing too horrible in it, and if it had been polished up a bit more, I really think it could have been a great movie to show kids. But for what we got, it's harmless. It's really not that bad when compared to other entries on this list, so honestly, that's why it ranks number 1 on this list. Number 2, Alpha and Omega 4, The Legend of Sawtooth Mountain. So this is going to seem strange when I talk about the realism in one entry and then pick one of the more fantastical ones as another entry for number 2. But trust me when I say I have my reasonings for this. Alpha and Omega 4 is all about trying to figure out this ghost mystery on a mountaintop and try to sort out the tragic event that took place there. It's your basic Halloween movie, and if the first entry is anything to go off by, this should have been lower on the list. Its animation isn't that good, there are plot holes the size of porcupines, and the new characters are pretty plain compared to the first movie. And yet, despite all of this, the movie still features a pretty realistic look at wolf culture or animal culture when it comes to creatures with disabilities. While we see in other entries on this list, a whole pack of alphas and dinosaurs coming to life, yes, we'll get there eventually, this movie actually has the guts to bring to life the fact that some animals really do not care about those who have disabilities and do kill off their members. Seeing the idea of wolves killing a pup who has a disability and is deemed unfit to survive is dark and honestly interesting. There are actual stakes, like in the first movie, that are so refreshing to see. However, while there are some major ups in this movie, there are some major downs as well. These issues mostly revolve around the fact that the pups should be adults at this point, but they're still pups, which restrict the plot. And make it weird why Kate and Humphrey are saying, oh, you ready to leave the pack? We knew this day would come, when they're still puppies. It's also the fact that a lot of the setup for Daria's pack and the ghost situation are just thrown to the wayside and we barely get any bit of them. And that suddenly the Omegas are given hunting rights to the forest, even though the whole world building in this story was to set up that the Alphas do the hunting. In the end, Alpha and Omega 4 is not as horrible as it could have been, but it's definitely not as good as it could have been either. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'd rather have a very mediocre film than a horrible film, and admittedly, it's a lot better than the holiday special we got previously, which we're gonna get to eventually. Number 3, Alpha and Omega 3, The Great Wolf Games. Okay, this one is what I would call the tipping point where things start to get really bad. Apparently, I guess making a movie referencing the corruption of the Olympics is exactly what this franchise needed. The 3 drama pups want to compete in the annual Winter Games. Humphrey and the Western Pack say no, the pups say yes, and montage ensues. Games happen, Claudette and Fleet get puppy dog eyes, and the race ends in a tie. That really is all you need to know about the movie. And you could save yourself 40 minutes of time doing something fun rather than watching this flop. The only good thing about this movie, though, is that even though they botched it up like mad, it did give us a few interesting aspects of the surrounding packs and seemed to draw on locations that were in the surrounding areas that are famous Canadian locations. And I will even admit, I kind of like Claudette and Fleet, just at the very end. However, 2 points does not make a good movie, especially when it honestly had the most potential to be a game changer in the entire franchise. The Wolf Games could have actually been something that expands the world and makes it an interesting topic as to how the wolves interact with other packs and seeing different creatures interact with the wolves. The problem is that the character design of these packs just make them look like Stinky, Runt, and Claudette shiny wolves and not actual characters. While character design has never been Alpha and Omega's strong suit, this was really the first sign that the animators were not getting paid in more than peanuts and probably were unfairly worked to the bone to get something out fast. While I know there are only gray wolves in Alberta, at least having the pups of different packs have different body types would have vastly improved the work. considering we interact with them a good bit of the movie. But instead, we have to look at color group 1, 2, 3, and 4 to tell the wolves apart, which also makes it harder when these packs are basically given 0 time to develop and become an amalgamation of things. This again could have been fixed if the team had just made the movie an hour and 30 minutes instead of the 45-minute shorts. I have no idea why all of these sequels are 45 minutes long after the first one, but it really affects the character development and story progression. And speaking of story, could someone tell me what these games were even supposed to be? Like, why are they all running challenges when it should be a diverse set of games that all creatures, if they were made long ago for them, could have joined in on for the fun? Now, if these games were said to be original ways that the pups were used to be tested on, I could get behind them all being races because it shows them hunting in different areas. But this just being a bunch of running competitions because running is fun just seems like a huge waste of potential. What if there were hunting, camouflage, tracking, howling, even swimming challenges? It could have looked at different aspects of the wolf pups and really examined what they're good at, instead of just seeing how fast one puppy can get from one side of the field to the other side of the field. At least with MLP, when they did a version of the Olympics, they added a variety of challenges to make it fun and interesting, though we unfortunately don't get to see much of that until Friendship Games. Overall, if these movies are getting beat out by things like Equestria Girls, then I think this is a bad sign of where we're about to go to. Overall, the movie is incredibly bad, and there is very little good about it. It's clunky, it's strange, it really leaves a bad taste in your mouth, which is only slightly fixed by Claudette and Fleet's interactions and any decision, but overall, it's just not good. Go watch something else or watch an actual Olympics. You'll at least get more depth that way. Number 4, Alpha and Omega 2, A Howl-iday Adventure. Oh boy, this was definitely a letdown. Okay, this one is what I would call the absolute start of the bash my head into the wall movies. Because while number 4 and 3 had their issues, they were at least passable. They had problems, but you could at least watch them because while they were dull and hard to sit through, they could still be sat through. Alpha and Omega 2 involves our group coming up for holiday fun times, I guess, which is revealed at Christmas at the end, but I have no idea if it was Christmas beforehand, with Runt being one of Kate's puppies getting stolen by an all-alpha group and the parents and the remaining pups trying to get him back, while this other all-alpha group is just trying to enslave everyone. It's confusing and clunky and hard to sit through. Like I said about number 4, the movie is not really a holiday special, and I can't really understand why it's marketed as one when it has nothing to do with exploring their holidays. Alpha and Omega 2 gives way too many questions that never get answered, which actually summarizes all my issues with the rest of number 2. Alpha and Omega 2 has way too many questions that never get answered and has no fulfilling conclusion to them. Some of the more prominent ones include, what are beta wolves and why have we never seen them before till now? Why is there an all-alpha pack and what happened to all the omegas? I know they hinted at what happened to the puppies, but what happens to the adults? Did they kill them or not? Or where are they now? Why is Claudette the only actually named puppy compared to the other 2 that are named really horribly abusive names? And most importantly, why is there Christmas in Alpha and Omega? Is there a wolf Jesus, a wolf Santa Claus, or something in this place? Does he go door to door or cave to cave bringing deer eyes and goat entrails for all the good puppies and rocks for the bad ones? I don't know, and that's what makes it so infuriating. This had potential to have a really dark and intriguing film about packs taking over other packs, considering the last one was about a massive slaughter over less caribou, and it's why I think people actually liked the movie, because it was real wolf issues getting explored. This is why it made me so confused as to why they went to this route of cartoony all-alpha jock wolves that made me want to bash my head into the wall. Plus, don't even get me started on how the animation took a nosedive compared to the first one, and the fact that there are no new songs to bring to something in the franchise to make it unique. I know the other ones didn't do that as well, but this is the first one that started it, and it makes me so confusing. Overall, Alpha and Omega 2 is a movie that is mundane at the very best, not good on average, and kinda bad at worst. It's uneventful, it's horribly crafted, and overall, it just doesn't do anything that could warrant why you would put your child in front of this movie to make them watch it. And if I have to say something good about it, at least it's not number 4 on this list. Number 5, Alpha and Omega, the Big Fureeze. I am still shocked Universal didn't sue them for all they're worth. I mean, just look at this! Similar plot, similar issues with Winter. Heck, the only difference is that the animal that they're focusing on is different, and that this one is the 7th in the franchise and the other was the 8th. But while Land Before Time actually decided to hunker down and make a pretty good movie, Alpha and Omega decided to chart its own course and make a horrible version of the same movie. Basically, Kate and Humphrey are separated in a storm, and the pups don't know where they are, so they went off to go find them. Everyone is stupid, there's a race to find the food, they bring back the food, and story over. Honestly, this is a pitiful contender in the series. The story is horrendous. The characters are bland. The conflict shouldn't even be a thing. That's right, it shouldn't be a thing, because guess what, folks? Wolves do better in winter. They thrive. Seriously, did no one in the studio research this? Like, in winter, they're actually able to hunt better because their prey is slower and weaker. They have paws that glide over the snow. I understand the caribou move sooner than they thought, but they understood they should have been able to track them, right? This alone should have been a sign that the movie shouldn't exist, but this tells me that the higher-ups wanted the cheapest made movie for the highest price. Which I guess is any a sign that this was true, because there was only one more after this. If I have to say something, anything nice about this movie is it's actually nice to see the pups hunting after something. I mean, they're wolves, they should be old enough to hunt at this point, so it's nice to see that. It may have only lasted 5 minutes in the movie, but it was at least somewhat enjoyable to see. However, 5 minutes doesn't excuse an entire 40 extra minutes of the movie that was bad. And overall, I think that's a great way to describe all of Alpha and Omega 7. This movie could have been 1,000 times better in my opinion if it focused on a summer drought. Something that wolves don't exactly do well in. Honestly, it's just a headache and not worth the effort to even look at it. For a wolf fan, it's pitiful. For a kid, it's sadistic making them watch it. If you bought it and are trying to find a use for it, might I suggest making a nice coaster for tea? Save yourself the trouble and let this one stay out in the cold, cold winter rather than in your DVD collection. Number 6, Alpha and Omega 6, Dino Digs. Okay, who in the office was on acid or crack when they made this idea? Seriously, who thought this was a great idea? Did you all just hear that Alberta had dinosaurs and therefore wanted to include it? For some reason, dinosaurs come in. Amy, Barney's rejected cousin, decided to become a focal point of the movie. The pups and all characters help the purple eyesore try to stop the humans from developing. All the while, Wereback's 3D knockoff decides to do its best to mess everything up. With boring storylines, too many references to human life, and pointless dance sequences that do nothing but pad out the runtime, Dino Digs is the shark-jumping event that made Alpha and Omega start to crash and burn into the ground. I mean, seriously, I got so mad watching this film, I had to walk away twice just to rant about it to my partners. There was no likable characters, no enjoyable story, no common sense. It's a dumpster fire of awfulness. Simply awfulness. I'd rather watch MLP Gen 3.5 than this movie, and it would probably make more sense than anything I just witnessed. There is nothing good about this work, and nothing I could see anyone enjoying out of it. Heck, I could even go as far as saying that it could be offensive to Canada, but that is a story for another day. It's furious to see this franchise claim that it's taking place in Canada when it actually shows no aspects of our country, like our wildlife, our people, or how we really take care of our national parks. It doesn't even go over major issues in Alberta like fracking. I shouldn't really be asking these questions when everyone knows it was just trying to cash in on the new Land Before Time movie that came out, but I still wish they did better than this. Overall, I would suggest to just follow what the movie does and bury this thing in the dirt. Do what the franchise couldn't and let this series rest in peace. Number 7. Alpha and Omega Journey to Bear Kingdom. Oh my fang, this was painful to watch. Seriously, this movie and burn this piece of trash on sight. Burn it to the ground and never let it see the light of day. No, actually, blast it in an incinerator. Sprinkle the ashes into another incinerator. Sprinkle those ashes then into the fiery pit of doom and watch it burn for all eternity. There's a reason this film got the number 2 spot as the worst film in the franchise and why it killed the franchise. It's pointless, it's dumb, it's one of the 2 most painful movies to sit through in the entire franchise, and it makes you want to smash your skull in. Basically, the pups team up with the bear royalty when it appears the coup is on the horizon. They try to help him retake the bear kingdom, and they eventually all live happily ever after, and I'm getting my puke bucket at this rate. I could go on a 2-hour rant about how this is a horrible final for a pretty bad series, but I don't want to waste giving this thing any more attention than it already has gotten. After all, I have a sneaking suspicion the creators of this film were somehow on drugs when they made it, and wrote it all in one night. This is especially true when you think about the bears in the franchise's canon, who have been incredibly aggressive throughout the entire series, and it's shown that only the bears can communicate with other wolves or choose to. Yes, Stinky mentioned that he and Brett were going to make the bear and wolf clans unite, but Brett and Stinky are still young children, and this alliance was made by grown adults. So how did the bears and the wolves do this? Plus, what was the point of the build-up if they didn't even have a paw in doing this? Who gave the bears the ability to speak and form a government? Honestly, I don't know how Winston and Eve are considered kings and queens of the forest, considering how highly everyone talks about them, but for some reason they're not. The stakes don't even make sense because apparently the alpha wolves want the water in the bear kingdom so they can control the flow of power, but they realize this is Canada, right? Like, we have one of the world's largest supply of fresh water. It's not always clean water, and if it was a pollution issue, I would have loved to see this, but it's not a pollution issue. The water is clean. So what are they getting at here? Heck, if you look back at it, the film goes through 6 to 7 different bodies of water that they passed. You could claim that these all come from the mountain source, and maybe you're right. Maybe truly, controlling that flow of water would be a bad thing for the wolves in the lower region. Maybe this was an ingenious idea made by the writers. But you want to know something else? I don't give 2 flying feathers because this still doesn't make sense! This was horrible to sit through, horrible to watch again, and every time I think I need to see it again, or someone suggests it, I start to gag at the thought of watching this movie again. It's annoying, it's tiring, I couldn't care less whether it's blown up or kept on someone's shelf. Overall, this movie should burn. Burn in the pits of Tartarus for making me hate the first film because it's an association with this, and I will gladly cling to the life raft that is wolf walkers to save me from drowning in this horrible movie. But you want to know the funniest part of all of this? All these 7 movies out of 8? This isn't even the worst film. This isn't even the worst film in the entire franchise. No, viewers. That position goes to our number 1 slot, which I'm going to tell you all, you better get a barf bag because we're in for a bumpy ride. And the number 1 worst Alpha and Omega movie is Alpha and Omega 5, Family Vacation. Now, I know what you're thinking. Starling, this is worse than all the other entries? How is this worse than shark-jumping dino movies or inaccurate wolf winters? How is it worse than the Bear Kingdom death of the series or lackluster Olympic Games or fake Christmas specials? Simple. Because this film can't even make the 45-minute runtime as the others. I'm dead serious. This movie is basically Kate and Humphrey running away with their pups to avoid animal relocators that are misunderstood as rangers or trappers or I don't know what, and the wolves try to get to Idaho. It's literally the most pointless rehashing of the first movie, but in reverse. In fact, they do rehash most of the first movie, because 50% of this movie is just flashbacks to older Alpha and Omega movies. I mean, splash entertainment. If I really wanted to watch the other Alpha and Omegas that came before this, I would watch the other 4 Alpha and Omega movies! There is nothing of substance here, and everything is reconnected, rehashed, or reskinned to make it its own totally original movie. Do not steal! Nothing about this movie is fun or enjoyable or entertaining. I'm not surprised the puppies wanted to run away from this adventure, because I would want to too. In fact, when I was watching this movie for the video, I just skipped past the scenes that were flashbacks because it's absolutely pointless. Heck, the creators didn't even really want to go back and look at their scenes properly, because at times the scenes are reworked to fit their scripts better in the current timeline and are just pointless to take a look at. There is nothing I could say about this movie other than it's horrible, disgusting, and unpleasant. It is a total package of horribleness that is the total experience of the Alpha and Omega sequels. There is no reason this needed to exist, no reason for it to have been a part of the canon, except to show people that it should have ended at number 5. As I mentioned, with 6 through 8, I think the creators were at that point just trying to see if they could get away with anything and make money off of it, and this was their starting point. But thank the claw that we are finally done. We're at the end. We can crown this movie the worst in the Alpha and Omega franchise, and number 5 and the rest of them can go off while we go on to much better things. And there you have it, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in this month. I know many Alpha and Omega fans may think that I didn't treat the series fairly, but I'm serious when I said I really gave this series the benefit of the doubt. It was just really bad. In my opinion, this series ended up being lazy, bland, annoying, and just so horrible. But the main question I propose to everyone who watched this video, did Alpha and Omega have to be a bad series? Or could there have been something that could have made this series a legend like the Land Before Time series? Find out when I answer that question as I try my hand at reworking the entirety of the Alpha and Omega series from characters to story and present to you my ideas. For now, this has been Silver Starling. See you next time you want to run with the pack.